listeners. This is your host, Abir Sikder. For this episode of the Local Global Leaders podcast, I spoke with my friend Sharon Murphy, who serves as the founder and director of Real Life Civics here in Lexington. We talked about her leadership development experiences, civic engagement at the local, state, and federal level that she conducts, and of course we talked for a while about one of our favorite crisis management leaders, Olivia Pope, played by the great Kerry Washington in the show Scandal. I learned a lot in our conversation about being a human-centered leader, about making change, and a lot more from Sharon. So hope you listen and enjoy. Greetings, everyone. This is Abir Sikder, host of the Local Global Leaders podcast here for WUKY, and I'm here with my next guest for our November episode, Sharon Murphy, who is the founder and director of Real Life Civics. Sharon, it's so great to have you today, and I really appreciate you taking the time for the interview.
Thanks for having me.
So, to start us off, I want to know who Sharon Murphy is and how you became a leader. So, can you introduce yourself to our listeners, and what do you want them to know about you off the bat?
What do I want people to know about me? Ooh, that's a loaded question because I've did so many things in my 36 years of life here on this earth. For one, I would say that I'm rooted in humanity, and I think society would be a better place if we could just see each other as humans and held each other accountable from a place of like love. Leader, I'm really not a person that's like caught up into like titles and everything, but if me doing the work to improve society, if that makes me a leader, then I guess I'm a leader.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And I know you said you don't love the title of leader, but I still want to go ahead and ask what I feel like you're a leader for sure. So what motivates you to be a leader in your community?
I think it's just the need for change. Like we as human beings, we're constantly evolving and we're constantly changing. And I think sometimes there's people in society that want us to stay stuck in one period of time. And it's like, no, like we're changing. Like I feel like as human beings, we're constantly in a process of like unlearning and relearning. So if you're in a process of unlearning and relearning, then with that, it's going to have to come change. So I just like to be someone that, make sure the change happens correctly in a way that is equitable for everyone.
I like that a lot. And does that work? I know in your main role, you're the founder and director of Real Life Civics. Can you tell us about your work there and how what you just said about, the change, how that affects the work there as well?
Yeah, so I started Real Life Civics because I saw people being angry and being mad about decisions, but like they were focusing all their anger and frustration. They were directing it at like the mayor or the president. And I'm like, no, it's the legislative branch. That's the branch that creates policy. That's the branch that impacts your life. Like that's the branch that you need to be mad at. And I found myself like I kept having like the same conversation like over and over again. I was like, okay, what can I do so where I don't have to have this same conversation over and over and I can reach more people? So I had the idea to start Real Life Civics, the website, with political education in mind. And then 2 months later, I was a part of the first cohort for the Lexington Black Prosperity Initiative Grassroots Leadership Award. So that I used that money to start the website. And the rest is now history. Now Real Life Civics is a business. So, yeah.
That's great. Yeah, it's cool that like you took something that you're a part of that initiative and you said you used the funding from that.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Websites they're not cheap. Like you got to pay for domains and host websites. They're not cheap.
Yeah. I know that you have a background in grassroots advocacy and community organizing, and that's, how would you say that that's helped you become a leader and influenced you to do the civics and change work you do now?
I would say grassroots advocacy and community organizing, it keeps me rooted in community and it keeps me close to the work and the people. I think sometimes when people are doing work to try to change society as they elevate, they kind of lose touch with society. But I feel like if you stay rooted with grassroots and in community, like you stay connected to the people, you stay close to the work, because there are things in my life that have changed, but other people are still impacted. So like I need to like remember, it kind of starts as like a memory of like why you got into doing this work. Because no one gets into grassroots community organizing for the money, because there isn't a lot of money in it. People that do this work, they do this work because they are truly passionate about their communities and about humanity overall.
Mm-hmm. And when you say like community, you're thinking of like Lexington community or Kentucky community overall, or how do you see that?
I see community as a wide range, like community, like of course in my immediate community, of course, like I live in Lexington, and then of course, I live in Kentucky, but there's other issues that affect well, because like when Congress, they don't pass policy based off your neighborhood or based off your state. Congress, and they make a policy that affects everybody. Also, Real Life Civics, it's very Kentucky based, but I also have subscribers that don't live in Kentucky as well.
It's cool. Yeah, I like that you have like this Kentucky-based organization, but it has that voice like across like the country, right? Mm-hmm. That's cool. And I know you just mentioned one leadership program. Can you tell us more about that, and then other leadership programs you've participated in that have helped you, affect the work you do now?
Yes, I was in the 2015 Emerge class, and then I did New Leaders Council in 2016. I know, call me crazy. I did both leadership programs back to back. There's still like one or two more that I'm thinking about doing, but like I kind of just took a break. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
And what did you like? What were some of the biggest lessons you got out of those programs?
The biggest lessons that I got was, I have to think about that. Because it's been almost 10 years since I did Emerge. I would say, so up until I did these programs, like I didn't have a lot of interaction with people that came from rural Kentucky. So I think just learning more about rural Kentucky and the learning like how we both have like, we still have challenges. The challenges look different, but we still have challenges, I would say. So it gave me a perspective about rural Kentucky.
That's good. I personally really appreciate hearing that. I'm from Eastern Kentucky originally. So yeah, like it's funny in our state, like how people in Eastern Kentucky think about Lexington and like Louisville, for example, than how we here in Lexington think about Eastern and Western Kentucky. So it's good that you like, I'm happy to hear that that's a big lesson you got out of those programs.
Yeah, the Golden Triangle, Louisville, Lexington, and Northern Kentucky.
Yeah. And were you able to like, from the program themselves, but also from your fellows, your like, I guess, classmates in those programs, were you able to, how did they influence you to become a leader?
It really just goes back to like challenges, just realizing that like we all have challenges, we all have shortcomings, but like they look different. And also as well, approach things from a place of like curiosity. Because, like you just said that, we all have stigmas about how we think that Eastern Kentucky is, or like rural Kentucky or urban Kentucky. So, but I think if you approach places from a place of curiosity, it gives you like that opportunity to like open your mind and, learn something new.
That's cool. And what are, I think you kind of teased this a little bit earlier, but what would you say are the biggest struggles you've encountered in your leadership journey?
I really don't like the word struggle, because struggle looks different depending on where you are in your journey. So I prefer the term like growing pains, because we all have those growing pains. But I would say growing pains that I've been met with is people not being open-minded to what could be. Because, earlier I talked about change. So in order for change to happen, you have to be open-minded of it. And sometimes that means you have to let go of some things. But I think some people are so used to just being like, this is the way things are. This is the way that things are just going to be. But not realizing, no, but you can change that. Like if you get a group of your people, like you can change that. Like if you don't like something, you can change it. You have the power to do that. You don't have to wait for anyone to do it. Like you, or even if it's just you, or even if it's just a group of people, like you have the power to change things that you don't like.
Would you say that, like to you, that makes empowerment, right, a big theme for people, right, to know they can change things?
Yes.
That's cool. And what are the biggest struggles, or rather, you said the biggest growing pains in particular you faced with leading Real Life Civics or other initiatives here in Kentucky?
I think when I first started, people was like, why are you doing that? Like, you don't need to do that. And I was like, actually, I do, because I came in contact with people and I was like, do you know what your city council member does? Do you know what your school board does? And I think for me, living in Lexington, I had to get used to. So Kentucky has, let me just back up. Kentucky has 120 counties, as you know, and Louisville and Lexington operate differently because we have some form of like, Louisville has a metro government, Lexington, we have a merged government. But everywhere else in Kentucky, they still have like their county government, and then they have like their city government. So for me, when I was doing my website, like I had to learn about like, what the jailer does, or like what the constable does, or what like the county judge executive does, or like the physical court. Like I had to like really research and tease out like those nuances. So that wasn't new for me. And then initiatives. I don't think I've led any initiative, but I've been a part of initiatives. Like I know back when I worked at KFTC and we did a huge campaign around pensions and tax cut at the time. Former Governor Matt Bevin, he was discussing making Kentucky a consumption tax-based model like Kansas. So me and other people at KFTC, we led this big, huge campaign to like educate people and let people know that this is not good for Kentucky. And we also worked with the Kentucky Center for Economic Policy as well. That kind of gave research and, provided like stats and numbers. So that was yeah.
That's cool. And we know, going off of those growing pains again, are there examples of toxic leadership you've experienced and then lessons you've learned from those as well?
Toxic leadership. I wouldn't say like I've experienced toxic leadership, but I have experienced times to where like I haven't felt like I was seen, or I haven't felt that my work was appreciated. So to overcome that, what I learned was, sometimes you have to be bold. You have to stand up for yourself, and there is a way that you can stand up for yourself without being disrespectful. So, yeah, and then it just goes back to approaching things from a place of curiosity as well.
That's good.
Yeah, because I think sometimes, like, if you ask the question, like, what are you doing or whatever, it comes off as, like, kind of dirt. But if you be like, okay, so I understand that this is your viewpoint, but, like, how did you arrive to, like, that conclusion? You can turn it into, like, a learning lesson.
Yeah. So sort of ask, because I think I think I know exactly what you're talking about. I've experienced this. Literally, I was like, hey, I'm curious to learn more, rather than asking a question that comes off as, oh, like I'm attacking you through this question, right?
Yeah.
And then what would you say is your leadership style or philosophy overall?
I like to put people in positions to where they can shine like their strengths, but also as well, if there's an opportunity for you to like throw in like opportunities to grow your weaknesses, I think that that's important. I also don't like to micromanage either. Like if I give you a task, I trust it like you're going to do it. But I also lead with you don't know what you don't know until you find out. And I think that motto and that philosophy encourages people to ask for help, because I'm 36 and I'm still learning stuff every day. Like we all don't know everything. So I feel like that's why we are in community with each other, so we can learn from each other. Because like no person can have like all the answers, because if that was the case, like the world would be a much better place if we all had the answers, and we don't have all the answers.
Yeah. And I think, the first two things you said tie back to the theme of empowerment you mentioned, of like empowering others and believing in others. And I think you tied it back to curiosity as well, that's like an important value to you. So that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Do you have like distinct leadership styles for like, what you do at Real Life Civics or versus what you've done in the past for other things or other things you're part of now?
Real Life Civics really hasn't grown to the point to where like there's other people. Like right now, Real Life Civics, like it's mainly just me, but I feel like when Real Life Civics does, because I'm going to speak into existence, when Real Life Civics does grow and, I do have to manage people, I don't know. I think it would be like a mix, because, life is not a one shoe fit all approach. So like different mechanisms are going to require different tactics. Like I just finished my certification in project management through Go with Google, and they have a model called Scrum. So Scrum is like a decentralized model. It's the where like you work in like teams, and then you all come together, you all have meetings, and as a team, you share what's worked on. So I think I would probably use like the Scrum model effect. And I think some other organizations are using like the Scrum model as well. Because like when I'm browsing on LinkedIn, I see like people, they have like Scrum Master as like their title and everything. So yeah.
Yeah, so I've seen, now that you mentioned it, I think I've seen that on LinkedIn too. So I've noted that for myself. I want to look into that for sure.
Yeah, it's like Scrum, and then it's like Agile. Agile is more like then first this, then that. It's more of like a linear, and then Scrum is like decentralized. So I think the Scrum model would like work though. I think if all organizations used that, if like your philosophy and your mission, allows for you, I think that most organizations should use the Scrum model.
Okay. It sounds like a really unique and innovative model.
Mm-hmm.
And then, with the roles you play as a leader, to me, I see like being a leader as something, you can be an effective motivator versus being an effective manager versus being an effective mentor. And I think leaders can do all three of those things. But, do you see differences in those roles, or that they're three distinct roles, or do you see them as like overlapping? Or I guess, how do you view those roles?
I think they overlap, and I think we just have to center it with humanity and putting people first and seeing each other as people. So I think like if you come in it with like a people focused like model, then I think, like the rest will come. And also too, like, don't be afraid to like pivot and change, because you may start something and then you may get to the middle of it and realize, oh, this isn't working. Like, we need to change. So like, just be flexible to like change. And so I think they're all three like work together.
Mm-hmm. And I like that you said like keeping it human centered, but also just be ready to adapt.
Mm-hmm.
I think like that's really helpful for me to hear, just because those are three, again, overlapping but dynamic roles.
Mm-hmm.
That like, leaders have to adjust between, okay, you got to motivate a team or motivate yourself. You have to manage a team or a project. Then, you usually want to mentor colleagues, but also be potentially like mentored by them.
Yeah. But the center of that though is you play those roles, but at the end of the day, we're all humans. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day.
Yeah. I'm visualizing a diagram of this right now. I might draw it out and send it to you and see what you think. So
okay.
I like this. What advice do you have for people who wish to become leaders? In particular, someone who may wish to start an organization like you to engage their community politically and civically.
I think do the work that fulfills you, and I feel like the rest will follow. Because, like, you have to be happy about what it is you're doing. Like, if you're not happy about what it is that you're doing, then eventually you're going to abort mission. That's why within, like, the last few years, like, you've seen so many, big-time CEOs or, like, people that run Fortune 500 companies or people that have, like, higher status. You're realizing that, like, they're leaving. And, like, they all have this central theme of, I'm not happy, or, this was impacting with, like, other things in my life. So yeah, just leave with that. And then I think if you want to start an organization, like whether it be politically, civically, or anything, like you have to ask yourself the question of what need or what gap am I filling? Like what are you answering? Like what problem are you solving? Because most businesses, they start out because they're trying to solve a problem. Mm-hmm. So you have to ask yourself that.
That makes sense.
And I plus as well, like collaboration. Like if someone is already doing something that is you want to do, see if you want to collaborate.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think, you mentioned earlier with Real Life Civics, you've been able to find those collaborators in the community.
Yeah.
That's cool. I appreciate you mentioning all those things about the leadership experiences you've had. Now I kind of want to ask about like the local, global context of how you see your role. So kind of a part two here, I want to start with, what leadership lessons have you learned from books, from movies, from TV, or from pop culture?
I think, especially me being in love with civics since I was 7. I should have said this in the earlier part, but when I was in 2nd grade, I looked at the poster and I saw that there was like no one that looked like me. So there were no black people on the and there were also like no women on the poster. So I used to say, I'm going to be the first African American woman president. So yeah, and then as I excelled more in my social studies classes, I realized that, but I want to be like policy. I want to change policy. So like the legislative branch is like more my speed. So yeah, and I think the first, and then Kerry Washington is the first person that I heard say this, but she said, you may not be thinking about politics, but politics is always thinking about you. So I'm pretty sure someone said it before her, but Kerry Washington was the first person that I heard say it. So that motto kind of like and I kind of lead with that as well, because people think, you ever talking about policy and everything, and that's not going to change my life. Actually, it is. Actually, like your whole life is ran through some shape, form of policy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really great quote. I know Kerry Washington, obviously. I'm a huge fan of the show Scandal. Watched it all. But she's also someone who is like politically engaged too. And you sort of uses, I'm guessing, what she learned from the show or working on that with that. So I really appreciate you mentioning that. And I like too you mentioning like looking to leaders who are like you. I mean, I totally empathize with that too. Like growing up, trying to find leaders who like someone who kind of looks like me or reminds me of myself. And like, yeah, I'm trying to find that with historical figures in social studies classes. So I totally appreciated hearing that. But yeah, with that, I guess this leads into that. Like, who are your most important leadership role models, whether fictional or real?
Being a Black woman in politics, of course, you have to name Shirley Chisholm. Like, how could you not? Like, you can't leave her like off the list. So I would say, of course, Shirley Chisholm, and then my favorite fictional character is, of course, Olivia Pope, which is played by Kerry Washington from Scandal. So I'm glad that you brought that up. But I just liked how she wasn't afraid to like live in her truth, and I also like how the show, like if you really watch it, like it hits on issues of like race and gender, like those like subtle undertones, like they're not really loud, but if you watch it from that lens, you will see that like, oh yeah, like Kerry Washington, like Olivia Pope, she's a Black woman running around DC and like fixing like all of these problems basically, even though that character was fiction. It's based off of, I can't remember the real person's name. I don't know if the real person's name was Olivia Pope or not, but it's based off someone that's a Black woman that's like in real life. It's like loosely based off like her story.
Oh, okay. Like sort of a DC power broker fixer.
I don't know like if she used that term or not, but I think she used the term like crisis manager, but I can't remember like the person's name. I'm drawing a blank on it.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, it's a very, very inspirational figure for me as well. Are you also inspired by any national and/or global leaders across the nation or across the world?
Not that I know of. I don't think. I think. But when it comes to women, I think that other countries they've had like pretty powerful women, like prime ministers. I think it was. I'm drawing like on the woman's name that was like I think she was like the prime minister like of Australia or New Zealand or whatever, but she helped like lead them through COVID. So she did a pretty good job. I
think Jacinda Ardern.
Is that her name? Mm-hmm. Yes, that's what I'm thinking of. Okay, yeah. And then of course like Europe, because of course America is heavily influenced by Europe. So in some countries in Europe they've had pretty powerful like female leaders as well. Yeah.
And I appreciate you mentioning, Jacinda Ardern as an example. I remember I saw a report out, I think, a year or two ago about how women leaders led COVID responses more effectively on average than male leaders.
Yes.
So just, something to think about.
Yes. And I think it's because with women, like we have to think about like the whole picture. Like we can't think of like one piece of the puzzle. We have to think of like the whole picture. And I think that attributes to women being better leaders.
Mm-hmm. I like that. And I think you sort of touched upon this earlier, but do you see yourself as the leader in a movement, whether, again, local, national, or global, through your work with Real Life Civics?
So in my Real Life Civics, if you go to www.reallifecivics.com and you sign up to join us, you're subscribing to my email list. You are a subscriber. Yep. Thank you. Yes. And so I send out an email every week. Some weeks I don't get to it, but every now and then I try to add stories like around the world, because I know right now what's going on in Gaza and Ukraine are getting attention, but there's also other humanitarian crises as well. Like Haiti is in crisis and Sudan is in crisis. Like there's other places besides those, but mainstream media only focuses on like those two. So I try to let people know that like there's other humanitarian crises that are going on, and these crises have been going on way longer. That's not to draw attention away from what's going on in Ukraine and Gaza, because, yes, that is important. So it's like a yes and. Like, yes, Gaza and Ukraine, they're going through their problems, but there are also other countries as well. So I don't want to put, like, the countries against each other. That's not what I'm trying to do. But I'm just saying, like, there's other humanitarian crises going on, and we should care about all of them equally.
Yeah. I think that goes back to what you said earlier about making sure that people are curious, that they're embracing curiosity. Like, hey, what else is happening in the world? Like, we want to know, of course, what's happening in Ukraine and the Middle East, but also what about other parts in the world we're not talking about?
Yeah.
But I really appreciate those newsletters and the updates you all put out, because it really goes through, what I need to know is for like a statewide election versus what's happening in the presidential election and what's happening around the world. So I appreciate the concise way that you think about that.
Yeah, because all three pieces like work together, and I think most people don't realize that, because most of the time what happens is like there's a federal policy, there's like a federal initiative, and then after that, so what happens is Congress passes it, and then after that it goes to like your state. Your state has to decide what their plan is going to do. And then most of the time what most states do is they create programs for cities to apply for to get funds to improve your community. And I think most people don't look at it as like a layer. It's like a cake. Basically, like you have local, which I feel like local and state are most important. I can't remember what it was, but I was watching a podcast and it said that the further down the ballot, the closer it is to you, because that is true. Because, of course, like whenever stuff is impacted federally, it takes it a while. But most of the time, most laws that are passed at like your city council or your county fiscal court or your state legislature, those are normally enacted within like 20 days after like they are passed. So, like you feel that effect like quickly. So yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate like thinking about all those levels of the cake and how government and how society operates.
Yeah.
I know you gave advice earlier for some, like if people wanted to sort of start an organization, but do you have advice for people who kind of hope to be a part of or to even lead a movement like you in the civic space?
Advice I would say, just do it. But I'm a firm believer in like once I start something, I'd like to finish it. So I would say if you're going to start something, be sure that like you make the time to like fully commit. And it's something that like you're truly passionate about, because even before I started Real Life Civics, like if you know me, then you know that like I can't have a conversation without someone without bringing up something like civically related or policy related. Like it's just in me. I believe in God. So no offense to anyone who doesn't believe God, but I feel like politics and policy is like my God-given gift, because like I just get it. Like, I don't have to put, like, little effort or anything. Like, I get it. Like, it just clicks.
Yeah.
It just clicks for me.
You feel like, I kind of like you mentioned earlier about founding a movement, like, it's something fulfilling and it's, like, meaningful to you, right?
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I like it. I feel like America will be a better place when all people succeed and all people have what they need to survive. And
do you feel like, too, is something, I mean, thinking about the civics work, yes, statewide, but also globally, is it hard to show people with your work like how this applies nationally and globally as well? To like to convince them of like that the layers of the cake, is it hard to get buy-in with people for that?
I wouldn't use the term buy-in, but I just think that people aren't thinking about it from that lens. Because most of the time when people, everyone in their life has something like they wish they could change. So like I kind of start with, okay, so what three things or just name things that would make your life better. And then like when they get to talking, like normally after like 3 minutes, like I can loop it back into policy at some level, whether it's, national, local, or state. Because here in Kentucky, we live in a commonwealth. So, there are certain things that, can be done, that can only be done through the state legislative instead of like your local branch of like government. So I can normally loop it in like 3 minutes. So
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think from conversations we've had, I've noticed that loop, and I always appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
I think it's something, I don't know if I can always pull it off in 3 minutes, but I've been told that I do that too. So I appreciate hearing that. Tying things back into like civics or at least a public policy at large. I don't think people always think about how everything is literally tied to policy.
Yes, everything. Even like us, we're at a radio station, so I'm pretty sure somewhere in this radio station, you all have got to touch base with the Federal Commission on Communications. I probably said the words backwards, but FCC is the acronym. So we're able to do this on this radio station because of a federal policy allows us to do it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that one took like 10 seconds. So.
I know. I can't help it. Like it's just in me. I can't help it.
And I think you talked about this with the updates you give with Real Life Civics, but more specifically, how does what's happening in the world affect what you're doing as a leader here in Kentucky and your work with Real Life Civics?
So I always tell people that's the issue. It's like we live in silos. Like I was just talking about, like bringing everything together. So my motto is live locally but think globally, because when you have to think about it, and I'm not the first person to say that. I heard somebody else say, and I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So I want to give credit where credit is due. I did not come up with that. Somebody else did. I'm just repeating it. We have to think about it though. The economy is globally, and like the economy is like what. In America, it's a very dominant capitalist society. So if the economy is messed up, then like you're going to feel it. So I just like to use that example. But yeah, and like if you're involved in the stock market or stock trade, like then like world events, like if you check your stocks, like they're gonna go down, they're gonna go up. But that is because change is happening globally, like everywhere. Like in America, yeah, we're having a presidential election, but other places had presidential elections too. Like Mexico had a presidential election. There's at least like 3 or 4 other places. I'm drawing a blank on the countries, but they had presidential elections as well, and all of that affects the market. As well. So I just like to use the economy as an example. And speaking of the economy, the president is not responsible for why grocery prices are high. It is the CEOs, because America is a free market society. I just want to add that plug in.
Yeah. Appreciate you saying that. And I love, you said that slogan, live locally and lead globally, very similar to the slogan I use for the podcast too. So definitely appreciate hearing that. And yeah, I appreciate you saying, like, thinking about the roles that leaders play, from like saying the president doesn't have that direct effect on the economy. Think more about private sector leaders. Is that something that you do try to emphasize with Real Life Civics as well, or?
I haven't yet, because I'm trying to time it just right. But I think coming up more, I'll start giving like little tidbits, since now that like we're closer like to the election, because I try to do things to where like it's fresh on people's minds. So I'm very careful as to like how I time and when I talk about stuff. Like I'm very meticulous about when I start talking about things. But I'll probably start talking about it more and like giving the definition of like free market. Like right now, I haven't found a good way to like put it to explain it in real terms. So like I'm working on it, because whenever like I try to make a definition, because that's one thing that people love about me. It's like you talk about policy, but like you make it so relatable. And in order for me to do that, I have to do research from like multiple sources, and then like I have to understand it. And then it's like, okay, if I was having a conversation with someone that doesn't have a lot of knowledge about politics and policy, how would I explain it to that person? So yeah.
Yeah, I think you have to make it translatable, put it in plain language, right?
Yeah.
I think that's something like effective leadership is all about. Like if you think of a U.S. president, they usually an effective speech they give, we can all understand it, but they've boiled down, them and their advisors usually boil down this complex
cabinet,
idea.
Yes.
Yeah, the cabinet, yes. Have boiled down this complex thing. I mean, people, I think something Olivia Pope did in Scandal, her team would like, okay, here's this complex issue. Let's break it down to this thing to manage the crisis, right? But yeah, I think that's a key aspect of the civic engagement and the communications to make it understandable, right?
Yes.
To people. You mentioned like the election. Like, what kind of things are you focusing on with the election happening this year? Like, what's Real Life Civics emphasizing there?
I think I'm really going to be focusing on policy, because I have my bachelor's degree from the University of Kentucky with a minor in philosophy, and then I have my master's in public policy from the Andrew Young School of Policy Studies at Georgia State. So, like, when I say, like, I live and breathe policy, like, I literally breathe it. Like, I went to school 6 years, well, five and a half, because I finished my graduate program 1.5 years. So I went to school 5.5 years after high school, because I love politics and policy that much. So, yeah, so I think I'm going to start focusing on policy. So, yeah.
That's cool. And how do you see, like, whatever happens with the outcome of this election, how is it important to, how will it affect Kentucky?
Well, in Kentucky, we have statewide elections. Our state legislature is up. All 100 seats in the House are up, and half of the seats in the Senate are up. I think this year it is the odds that are up. The odds, yeah. So, It impact then, and plus we know that some people, they aren't returning to our state legislatures because they are retiring. So that's going to be an impact, because now people have to learn new personalities and new ideas, and and of course votes. You gotta count your votes. So, yeah. But I would just say policy is always changing. It's always so regardless of what happens with the election. I always encourage people after the election. I always encourage people, even if your preferred candidate did not win, you still need to have a conversation with that person, because that person is your representative, and just see if you and the person that won may not agree with you, but see if out of your 10 issues, just see if you all can agree on 2 and you can work on those 2 things with that person. So, yeah.
So, yeah, find that common ground and embrace that curiosity.
Yeah, because compromise is not a dirty word. I don't know when compromise became a dirty word. For the longest time, compromise is how we got things done at all levels of government. So I don't know when compromise became such this ugly, divisive term. But I'm not saying compromise. I'm saying compromise, but lead with your morals and values. Because sometimes you can compromise without jeopardizing those 2 things. Like if something jeopardizes my morals or my values, that's where I'm all right, I got to back away. This compromise is not going to work. But you never know until you try. That's what my father always taught me. You never know until you try. So just try. Try to meet with that person and see if you can find common ground. If you can't, okay, but at least you can say, I tried. That person knows that, I'm the, and also too, hold your elected officials accountable as well. So, yeah.
I appreciate, and I appreciate you bringing all that in, because I asked you about the presidential election, but I keep forgetting myself. Oh, yeah, we have a lot to vote on here in Kentucky, other states as well. Think about your local officials and your state officials. I mean, that's a bigger ballot than the one presidential ballot, obviously. So, yeah,
presidential election is still important because the presidential election is going to control cabinet, so it's going to affect policies like free lunch program and everything, that is housed in the Department of Agriculture. And the part of the president's cabinet is, who's going to run agriculture. What department head is going to run that, or matters such as transportation, who is going to be the Secretary of Transportation. All of that affects us because we live in Kentucky. But I'm pretty sure, if you want to do something fun, I'm pretty sure you've went to Ohio or you've went to Indiana. You got to travel on that highway. That highway is governed by national policy. So, it's all important.
Yeah, it all ties in.
Yeah.
What are your hopes for the future of, I'll say for yourself, your personal goals in leadership, but also for, Real Life Civics? How do you see it growing?
I don't know. When I first started Real Life Civics, I wasn't planning on sending out, a weekly email. I believe I was having a conversation with somebody. I can't remember what it was, but I just started the weekly email, and I think I just started doing the weekly email. I think it just came up either on a year or a year and a half, in August or July maybe. But I didn't plan to start it, but I saw a need for it, so I was let's go. Because interim session, a lot of people don't realize what interim session is. So in Kentucky, interim session is the period from June to early December, and this is where committees they meet, and it's kind of like their research for them, kind of like where they do research to maybe shed a light on policies that they may introduce during the general session. So and people don't realize interim session it's a thing, it's something that we need to pay attention to. So yeah, but I don't know where Real Life Civics is gonna go. I don't know. I'm just kind of taking it one day at a time. Right now, Real Life Civics is done out of my house, so I do hope one day to get money to where Real Life Civics can be an office front, and I can host trainings out of there. Or I can create drop-in hours, and people can come by and ask questions, and also too teaching little kids as well, doing civic events for them as well. My nieces, I love them to death, and they know about civic information and everything. So yeah, that is what I see. It's a office space for office hours for people to drop in and for me to do trainings and everything. So yeah, that's the vision.
That's awesome. I love hearing about the potential civic education for youth. I mean, I say myself, I've always wanted to at some point be a civics teacher. Gotten to do that with volunteering and part-time here and there, but I really appreciate hearing that.
Yeah. I could see myself maybe being an adjunct professor at a university somewhere, but yeah. But I don't know.
Yeah. I say if you ever need volunteers to help with civic lessons, let me know. I'd love to see if I can help out with that, especially for young people.
Yeah.
And that's awesome. How do you see the work you're doing with Real Life Civics? How is that putting Kentucky on the global map to show the world what Kentucky has to offer?
I never really thought about Real Life Civics in this concept because I'm heavily rooted in like education. So it's just like educate people because like I said before, I'm a firm believer and people don't know what you don't know until you find out. But I mean, I guess, I don't know if I put it relative on the map globally, but I do know like my 30 subscribers that I have that don't live in Kentucky.
Oh, okay.
I do know that like it's helping them and like they're using my information to share like in their circles and everything. So, yeah, but I think I just want to dispel the myth that like Kentucky is just like this commonwealth that like just doesn't have anything to offer. Like we're just and like, no, like Kentucky has like something to say. Like we have like bright people here. I know some of my friends who have went off, they've said that Kentucky produces good political workers that work on teams and campaign fields. And I think it's because Kentucky, like our electorate is just very like unique. Like right now we have a Democratic governor, but all the other statewide offices, they're all like Republican. So, you know, that's just a unique perspective that like Kentucky has to offer. Like we look at things through like a different lens. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I think like we're not just any state, we're a commonwealth with a unique perspective into how we operate, but also how we look at things, including politically, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time for this podcast interview. It's been really great learning about your civics engagement work, learning about, again, like I see you as a leader in a movement of something you founded here. So it's really appreciate that work and really excited to see where it goes and how it grows.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. And again, thank you for being a subscriber. And also, if you would like to be a subscriber, go to www.reallifecivics.com. I have every elected position on there, including the judicial branch. If you go on the candidates page, you can find people that are running for president. You can find all the statewide offices. And if you live in Lexington, you can find your local candidates as well and school board as well. So, yeah.
That's great. Yeah, it's a lot of great resources. And thank you so much for sharing that and for the work you do.
Thank you.
But yeah, thank you so much. That concludes my interview with Sharon Murphy. I appreciate her dedication to civic empowerment and the way that she really thinks about how public policy matters to everyone and really to everything that we do. As Sharon mentioned, you can learn more about her work with Real Life Civics by visiting reallifecivics.com, where you can sign up for their newsletter as well. My next episode will feature Michelle Hollingshead, a successful author, executive coach, cultural consultant, and the founder of Imprint, a great organization that helps individuals and groups by offering leadership development services. Remember to live local and think global, fellow changemakers.